I see more problems for people who are willfully neglecting their obligation to comply. David's
I have
like,
nothing to say about that. the mental pictures in my head are just killing me.
You're listening to the Help Me with HIPAA podcast, where HIPAA and humor collide to make learning fun. Your delightful hosts are Donna Grindle and David Sims. Relax, HIPAA help is on the way.
Welcome to the Help Me with HIPAA podcast. My name is David Sims, and I am from HIPAA for MSPs, and joining me as always is my co-host, Donna Grindle of Cardin Compliance. How are you doing today, Donna?
Fantastic, David. Fantastic.
Awesome. So not long ago, we had our Scary Halloween episode come out, which was good. It was well received. I'm glad of that. And we have some others coming up that will be related to the holidays. But today, even though it's not Halloween, we're going to be gazing into a crystal ball. And we're going to be kind of given a little glimpse into what we believe will be the future of enforcement coming from OCR.
But we will provide backup as to why we think this.
Oh, no. Give them reasons. Just do it.
We'll be logical about it. I'm not letting David run free, loosey-goosey with ideas. It would go horribly awry. Maybe one time we need to let you go fully loosey-goosey and I just follow whatever you want to talk about. But I'm not sure what would happen.
Alice, just follow me down the rabbit hole.
Well, let's go, brother.
All right. So the enforcement changing. There's some things that's been happening recently. You know, OCR's kind of got slapped on the wrist by OIG in a report. You know, you're not doing enough. And so we'll dig into that report and kind of talk about that. And then we'll switch gears into some things that were happening with a breach that for some reason nobody could make go away until the NBC News got involved. So that's kind of gave OCR a little bit of a black eye. So I think next year, coming up in 2016, we might see OCR coming out really swinging to try to, revamp things and shake off all these bad reviews they're getting from people.
Well, it's what's interesting is the OIG report, and the OIG report last year said similar things, that they're not doing enough to enforce HIPAA and making sure these breaches and identity theft and fraud gets more under control. They, even in their study that they did, they were actually interviewing the OCR staff and the officials. You know, they surveyed the staff and they talked to the officials. So it's not like OCR is thinking they're doing a great job. They're telling everybody, we are not doing enough. We just don't have the funding. We don't have the resources. And, they're doing stuff, but when we're talking to, when a client who has experienced a breach is talking to their breach investigator and saying, this has taken a really long time, the investigator explains, there's 6 of us in this office and we cover 10 states. And you think about how many things are hitting that wall of shame. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And they can't,
That's a lot.
It requires time, and you got to study this and you got to learn about it. And you got to look into the programs and all of that kind of stuff. So they definitely aren't beefed up yet, because this is, under high tech is when they were given the ability. First of all, there really was no serious enforcement built into the law. High tech changed that. And there was no specific entity other than HHS itself defined as the enforcer. Great enforcer. Mm-hmm. So now they are the enforcer, and you have to build these programs. So I understand that, but that doesn't change the fact that the problem is huge. And in the report, there were some really interesting things, but I found the most telling as to why this is a problem for OCR is in the OIG investigation, where they reviewed all of the documents that had come in from the providers and information about their privacy standards and those kind of things. And they surveyed some Medicare B providers even on it. And So they have a lot of information, and they said in their investigation that OCR is doing their job. They're properly investigating the large breaches, but they noted that in almost all the closed large breach cases, it determined that covered entities are non-compliant with at least one HIPAA standard. So they're saying, look, we know you need more enforcement because the enforcement you are doing is telling us that people aren't doing it. So they came out in their report and they said, okay, we need you. OCR should be doing these things. They should enter the small breach information into its case tracking system or a searchable database linked to it so that you can see what's going on. Because, they're investigating the large breaches, but if you have 500 small breaches, they're not getting investigated. If you have 500 breaches of 10 people or less than 500 people. So let's say you have 500 breaches of 499 people. You're not getting investigated. That's great, right?
Okay. Yeah.
I don't either, but still add that up and now you got a huge number. And so then the other thing is they're not maintaining the corrective actions that were taken. There's not complete documentation on the corrective actions. They're just letting them say, this is what we did in a few sentences. And there's no case tracking system so that they can match it up. So that if you come in and you land on somebody's desk, they have no way to see how many prior breaches have you had. There's no easy way to do that. They don't have a requirement to even look for that because they can't do that very well. And they're also saying there needs to be some outreach effort by OCR to try to do more in education with the covered entities, which the covered entities keep asking for. And OCR keeps saying, look, we're doing all these things. We need more input as to why you're not using the things we're already doing. But the interesting thing was OCR concurred. They said, yeah, we're doing this. And that was kind of funny. And they even go through and they put in the report, their response to the report on what they're trying to do to address the things. But they're on board and saying we need to do more. So that led us down that rabbit hole, Alice, of believing in a crystal ball that things at least are being told to change. And then we hear some of these other things. So the first we need to give a shout out to a tool that we use. They do a great job aggregating information on HIPAA compliance and information. And we both use them. And David didn't want me to give him a shout out because he's afraid everybody else will start using it. And and then maybe we won't be able to do it the way we can. But it's my precious. I want to keep it to myself. But the guys at HIPAA Journal, we have absolutely no connection with them at all. We don't even. I don't know if you even reached out to them, but no, we both use them all the time, and we love what they're doing and hope that they keep doing it. And I guess we'll make sure that we mention them in a tweet or something, and certainly when we publish this episode, point it out. But we highly recommend HIPAA Journal and find them very informative, and the job that they do with aggregating all this information is fantastic. So there's our plug for somebody that clearly is not paying us because they don't even know who we are.
Got to give them props, though. They're doing a good job. Because we know how hard it is to do what they're doing.
We keep trying to do it because we have to read all this stuff. So, but since we've discovered them, we're very happy. And they make us putting this information together instead of us having to go find it in all these places, which we do find it elsewhere. But I don't know about you, David, but when I find it, then I go to HIPAA Journal, see what all they know about it.
Yeah, I usually, depending on the article, I usually will go to a couple of different places, but HIPAA Journal is usually my go-to, either first or last, because they do kind of condense things down. Yeah. And so I'll look at that as well instead of the whole thing. So yeah, they're doing an awesome job over there.
All right. So thanks for helping us find things easier and get our information together, because the next few things that we're talking about here, it was easier rather than going to 42 places to pull it from HIPAA Journal, and we wanted to give them the props for it, as David said. He can no longer make it. He's precious. So, big news it was quite interesting, is in New York, a advertising firm started receiving faxes with medical information on patients from, quote, an unnamed medical clinic in April of this year, and it was thinking it was going to Quest Diagnostics. And Quest Diagnostics, one of the big, lab companies out there. And so the faxes of those documents kept going. I mean, they just kept coming, and it was now coming from multiple facilities. And it's, the result of staff entering a fax number incorrectly. And it was clearly happening across the board. So maybe it was published incorrectly. I don't know.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm thinking. If it come from one location, I would think somebody's putting it in wrong. But if it's coming from multiple places, then somebody's just giving out the wrong information.
Somewhere it's wrong and then been handed off to others. So they told two people and they told two people. You don't remember that? Okay.
It's on Facebook.
And that's where we get all of our information. So the advertising firm, number one, is they knew they weren't supposed to be getting this stuff and that it was really protected information because they were clearly getting lab test information with all the details about a patient getting a lab test or requesting one. So you're learning things you don't want to know about people. And they were trying to make it stop because, of course, it's clogging up their fax system as well. They want to get their faxes, not somebody else's. So they go to Quest and they say, make it stop. And what did Quest say? They said,
okay.
We'll fix it. But nothing happened. Either they couldn't figure out how to fix it or they thought they fixed it. I don't know. So then the advertising firm calls HHS and files a complaint about privacy breaches. Yeah. So it goes to, OCR and they're looking into it and they get notification that OCR is looking into it and that they're going to resolve it, through contacts and even said, here's a technical contact at Quest and they had done all this already. Well, the bottom line is OCR only has so much control because Quest technically isn't doing anything. They just gave out a wrong number and it's all these different facilities and you don't know where the wrong number is. So it's going round and round and round. So finally they keep getting these things even after they report it to OCR and they call OCR and OCR tells them that the item's been closed.
Oh, okay. It's all taken care of. Close your eyes.
Yes, we've done all we can do. We've closed the investigation.
Pay no attention to the PHI behind the curtain.
Right, which goes back to the follow-up that they're talking about on corrective actions and stuff, has it really been corrected?
Mm-hmm.
And, we still don't know all the details, but what finally made it stop because these people were so frustrated. They didn't want the faxes. They didn't want the information. They're having to shred it. And of course, it's in their systems, which they don't want anywhere near being a problem for this. They called the news, put them on TV. So all of a sudden the problems get fixed.
It's amazing how that happens.
Yeah. You're on the news for doing all this stuff. And ironically, all of this came out, the OIG report on OCR was in September and this news is coming out now. So they're all coming out around the same time, just reiterating over and over and over before we go into a new year where OCR has already said they're going to do all these things that are going to start coming out. They're going to have guidance on cloud computing, which is, the security rule was developed in 2005 and hasn't really changed since then. And I was recently doing a training class it was a software company, and I said, okay, if it was in 2005, how many people in this room hadn't graduated from high school in 2005? I was like, and so grandma's up here teaching you about HIPAA. But needless to say, the majority of the people in the room hadn't even graduated from high school, and now here they are developing software and supporting it and all these other things. And the rules haven't changed since then, but we know how much the technology's changed.
A lot.
A bunch. And there's no guidance on cloud computing. When cloud computing happened just in the last 5 years, really. it became the thing. So they're supposed to come out with that. They're coming out with the audit program. They have developed the system that allows them to track the breaches better, the smaller breaches, and they're rolling out all this stuff, but it's not fast enough, and it's not enough.
Mm-hmm.
So they're getting nailed left and right, and eventually somebody's going to pay attention, because if you want this done, the money's got to come from somewhere, because it takes people.
Right.
We can't make computers do this. If we could, you and I'd be rich. We'd figure it out.
Yep, we would.
Okay, maybe I would, and you'd follow me. I don't know. Oh, no, you come up with the craziest stuff, and then it works.
Hey, you know what they say? It's all about the execution.
It is weird how, you're the one that says, hey, let's go do this. And so eventually I've learned, okay, I'll just see where it goes. And hence this podcast. So that tells you, so now we're, you're laying it on, you're layering it on. Just pile it on. OCR is at the bottom of the pile now, and no one's getting off.
Mm-hmm. And eventually it's going to snap back the other direction.
Yeah, it's like my brother-in-law used to play the game Hop on Pop with his little boy. He'd lay down on the floor and let him jump on him and stuff. And, when they were tiny, it was cool. Let me just jump up on you. And it didn't hurt too much. And then you knew when he had hit that moment where he was too big. Let's just say Hop on Pop was no longer a game we played. So they're being piled on, and it gets worse, or at least more stressful. And because now the dysfunction junction is getting involved.
And who might that be?
Some senators.
Oh, Congress.
Oh, yeah. Now, the one hopeful thing, we'll call it, in this scenario is that there's 4 senators involved in signing this letter. It's a letter that asks for things, and it's bipartisan, 2 Republicans, 2 Democrats. So you don't see that much these days. It's good to see that, and it's asking the right questions, and hopefully it'll come. Because without the money, which comes through Congress, they're not going to be able to do much anyway. Mm. So all of this hop on pop stuff is happening to them. And so the senators, let's see, should we mention their names? They shall remember their names.
If it's public information, go ahead.
It is. So we have Lamar Alexander from Tennessee, Patty Murray from Washington, Orrin Hatch from Utah, and Ron Wyden from Oregon. I assume that's how you pronounce Wyden, W-I-D-E-N. But they signed the letter, and I don't like the word demands answers, but that's, But anyway, they sent 9 questions relating to the role, what HHS, OCR, and CMS are doing to help fend off some of the problems with medical fraud and medical identity theft that's coming from these healthcare breaches. And, we need to drill down in one of our episodes more about what really is, why do you want to protect this information? We haven't really talked about that as much, but we can put that on our list of things to talk about. Okay. And they point out healthcare breaches. I've seen different numbers. I don't know about you, but I've seen stuff like 130 million. I've seen, but this article mentions 105 million individuals this year.
Yeah.
Now 80 million was Anthem.
Yeah. They get the prize so far.
But still, and 2015 is not done. But I did see, another number that said it was 130 million. So I haven't gone back and done any math because I don't know that all of those numbers are accurate. But the HIPAA Journal article pointed out that over the past 6 years, it's 154 million. So clearly, if we've got 100 and something million this year, the delta for the rest of the 5 years before that is the 50 million. So it's getting worse.
Mhm.
And these victims, the medical identity theft has a great deal of people could die. And we tell a lot of the stories about what actually happened to people whose medical identity has been stolen. And we'll go into that in that next episode. But it is a big problem. And they're asking about what are we doing? They want to know how are we monitoring medical identity fraud and what are they doing to track the cases of identity theft and fraud that's coming from these breaches. So first of all, we're not happy that they're not investigating enough and enforcing enough, but we're also not monitoring what happens after the breach. And they're definitely not able to do that. I mean, they've got these corrective action plans and all of that stuff, but no one is tasked with how bad does it really get? How much is really happening to these people? And we won't know for years because you know how that stuff kind of hides out on the dark web when the bad guys get it.
Right. Yeah. I mean, if you're going to do anything with it, especially if you just got the information while everybody's doing their, 1 year free credit monitoring, then just wait until the credit monitoring goes away. Most people aren't going to keep it after that. And then that's when you start coming out and attacking that information that you got.
Yeah, one thing to know about these hackers that go in and get things, they're either after it for some specific reason and they get what they want and they go do what they want, or they're after it for selling it and using it for fraud cases, that gets sold multiple times. Well, the ones that are after it to sell it, they already have a massive amount of patience to do what it takes to get in, unless you're the low-hanging fruit, which we've talked about before. Where does your fruit hang?
It's on the ground.
Yeah, you trip over it. So they're very patient and they'll hold on to it for a couple of years. So we won't know some of this information. So it has to be monitored long term that we're looking at.
Right.
But they made an interesting point that they looked at the Medicare, Medicaid programs, which, in case you don't know, and we throw around all these acronyms all the time, HHS, Department of Health and Human Services. OCR is the Office for Civil Rights within HHS. They are the ones that are tasked with the enforcement that we talked about. And they enforce not only HIPAA, but other rights as well. So, the patient's rights for, the hearing impaired or translators and, all these other patient rights, they are enforcing those as well. And then CMS, so they're the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services, and they are the ones that are just managing those medical programs for Medicare and Medicaid. In their budget, approximately $98 billion to cover the cost of medical identity theft.
Holy cow.
Yeah,
crazy.
We're talking about medical costs and how they're going through the roof. 10%, they think, 10% of their budget is to deal with the effects of medical identity theft on the programs.
Wow.
$98 billion.
So just addressing that one thing would cut costs down by 10%.
Yeah. Well, let's cut it in half. Let's take it from 98 billion, instead of closer to 100 billion, let's get it down to 50 billion.
Yeah, something that, a little more manageable.
First of all, we're using words like billion. Yeah.
Sooner or later, you start talking about real money.
Yeah, I know, really. So when you look at it that way, all of the things that we talk about, and we talk about the penalties and the fines, that was astonishing to me. That's a number I'm going to go do more research on because I really want to understand what they're having to do. And I'm sure they are. I'm not doubting that they're having to do it. I just want to understand all the things that they're having to do when you start thinking about you've got people using the wrong, I'm going to go in and I'm going to get my treatment. Somebody's going to have my identity and they're going to go in and get more treatment that nobody's paying for. So I'm paying for the same person twice, even though the other person's not covered. And and then you don't even know about the mixed medical records and the problems that can cause, and copays not being paid. It's just huge, massive amount of money. So, cha-ching, there's another reason to do it. If that's just the Medicare and Medicaid, you got to assume what's happening with the Blue Cross Blue Shields and the Anthems, who have contributed to the problem. What is that line? Pay me now, pay me later?
Yeah, exactly.
So they're the senators request that, and there's 9 questions that get into a lot of the things. What are they doing? How is it being monitored? How's it, are we trying to educate people and covered entities? Because if we educate the covered entities more, in theory, they'll do more to protect it. Hey, wait, that's what we talk about. So they've asked for a response from HHS and CMS and OCR, which are part of HHS, by November 24th.
All right.
That's what day, David? That's right before Thanksgiving.
Yeah. So that's going to be kind of difficult.
Yeah. Well, and this episode won't come out until after our Black Friday show, which if you're just listening to this and you haven't listened to Black Friday or the Halloween episode, you should go do that.
Not right now. Just wait until we're done here.
Yes, we're almost done here. So pretty much, though, it's clear, and it's why we, in our crystal ball approach, we're kind of thinking maybe the enforcement's going to change. Right, David?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, we talked about it a little bit before we started recording, but I mean, it's like anything else. If somebody's on top of you all the time about, you need to do more, you're not doing enough, eventually you just come out and go, you know what? I'm going to fix this problem. And you end up going to the other end of the spectrum where, I mean, you're just hammering everybody because you're trying to get all these people off your back. And so that's kind of, what I'm looking for to happen. I hope it doesn't, honestly, because nobody wants to be made an example of. But, I think that there hasn't been a whole lot of enforcement, proactive enforcement, I guess I can say, in the past couple of years. And so when they come out, they're going to come out swinging.
No, there's no proactive enforcement, really. It's all reactive coming from the breaches and the investigation and the complaints. So the audit program, the proactive enforcement, they've had the test in 2012, but nothing since then. But again, that's the thing that's supposed to come out in 2016. So that's why we see in our crystal ball, I see more problems for people who are willfully neglecting their obligation to comply. David's
I have nothing to say about that. the mental pictures in my head are just killing me.
I got my crystal ball in front of the table. I've got all of the outfit on, the curtains behind me with the people going, woo. So,
okay.
Needless to say, we have a lot to share. And we'll put all of the links to all this information so you can look it up yourself, because I always believe in making sure you have the ability to check it all out. And of course, we'll put a link to our friends at HIPAA Journal. Well, we hope they'll be our friends.
I was fixing to say, they're not our friends. We don't even know them yet.
We hope they'll be our friends.
After this, they will be, my precious.
Or they'll say, shut up. We don't want to be associated with you.
Too bad.
Oopsie. So I think, there's a lot more we could talk about on this topic, but, the one big thing I wanted to add in there, somebody did a study that said pretty much all this is worried about. And when they did a survey of 2,000 people, pretty much nobody's expecting the covered entities to protect their data at all. They just don't expect it. They don't trust them. They don't expect them to protect their information. And when you look at it, then how can you feel positive about the care you're providing? Because maybe they're not telling you things because they can't trust you to protect it.
That's true.
So
that is very true.
There you go.
Times are a-changing.
Times they are a-changing. Oh, let's don't start singing.
So that's our show for today as we look into our crystal ball. And we thank you for listening. We actually knew you were going to be listening because she looked into her crystal ball. So head on over to iTunes and give us a review. We really appreciate that. Also, if you will share this episode out on social media, we appreciate that as well. You can visit us at our website at helpmewithhipaa.com. And if you have a question, you can even leave that right there on the front page. And we might even feature your question in a future podcast. So for Donna and myself, remember that HIPAA is not about compliance. It's about patient care.
You've been listening to the Help Me with HIPAA podcast, hosted by Donna Grindle and David Sims. The show created to help you with HIPAA. For more information or to ask us a question, visit our website at helpmewithhipaa.com. Neither Donna Grindle or David Sims are attorneys, and they do not offer binding legal advice concerning regulatory compliance. The information in this podcast should not be relied upon or construed as legal advice in any way. Consult your attorney for legal advice concerning compliance with HIPAA regulations.